presentations because they're really boring. So, sorry. So this is exciting. Oh, okay. So, hello, everyone. Oh, microphone. I can't really see anyone. It's nice to be here in Hull. It's my first time here. I'm Stuart Heritage. As Jackie said, I'm a feature writer for The Guardian. I write lots of different pieces for lots of different parts of The Guardian. For the site, I do TV blogs and film blogs. I live blog X Factor every year, which is fun. For G2, I tend to be sort of like the stand-in columnist whenever anyone's ill. And I've just started doing sort of bigger features for Weekend magazine on Saturday, which all tend to sort of be about myself because I'm a massive screaming narcissist. But as mainly, technically, I'm a freelance writer. I am on a retainer at The Guardian, but I can still write for other people. And I thought I'd talk about that to you because no one ever really sort of thinks that they're going to be freelance, in my experience. People sort of, when they want to become a journalist, they think, I'll get a nice staff job, I'll sit at a desk, and I'll have a job for life. And that doesn't really happen anymore, especially now, I've found, because I wanted a staff job. So I will talk to you about that. My presentation is called, as you can see, 15 Things Will Definitely Happen to You as a Freelance Writer. It was going to be called 15 Things That Will Definitely Happen to You as a Freelance Writer, but I apparently would make a really bad sub-editor. So, sorry. Also, I've got to shoot off at about 12, so that's my Twitter name. If you've got any questions and you want to write to me, then that's how you can get in touch. All right, so I want this to be kind of inspiring and realistic and sort of G you all up for your careers, potentially, as freelance writers. So the first inspiring thing that will definitely happen to you as a freelance writer. Okay. You will realise that you have the worst job in the world. Like I said, no one goes into freelance journalism thinking that they're going to be freelance. And when you do, it's sort of crap. You have to fend for yourself. If you only get paid for the things you write, you have to do your own taxes. You don't really sort of see people in the day. You don't work in an office, you just sort of sit at home. You don't get emails from people saying, oh, there's cake on the photocopier because it's Sarah's birthday. Or worse, you do get those emails and you're not there at the office to eat it. And you just spend all the day thinking about cake, and that's pretty rubbish. And you don't have people to learn from. And it's very sort of hand-to-mouth, and it's cold, and it's lonely, and you feel isolated and sort of alienated, and it's not very good. So that's point number one. Point number two. Right, okay. You will become appallingly, I'm speaking from experience here, appallingly needy and exploitative. Your first few months as a freelancer, the most important thing that you're going to be able to get are contacts. You need to find editors who will let you write for them, and publications who will let you write for them. And if you don't have any, you'll do sort of anything in your power to get them. You'll ask your friends if they know anyone. You'll ask friends of friends. You'll ask kind of that guy who cracked onto you at a party and he was creepy, and you're sort of Facebook friends with him, but you've muted him, but you said he might have been a journalist. You'll ask him. Someone at a bus stop if they look a bit like a journalist. This is how I got to write for The Guardian. I knew someone who was a sub-editor at The Guardian, and I pestered him for weeks for the TV editor's email address. And luckily, the TV editor had a cyst in his brain at the time. He was literally having brain surgery, and the stand-in editor just didn't know what he was doing. So he was like, yeah, write this. And then I just wormed my way in and made myself really, impossible to sort of get rid of. So it's not the best time of your life when you're doing it, because you're unpleasantly mercenary. You might have a hard time looking at yourself in the mirror, but it's good, it's nice afterwards because you got work. So that's something. Point number 3. That's point number 4. So point number 3 wasn't a very important point, actually. It was just basically because you don't really have a commute, you're going to put on some weight. That was about it. Well, it really wasn't very important. Point number 4. Right, strangers will make terrible assumptions about you when you tell them that you're a freelance writer, especially if you work from home, doing features like I do. One of the things I hear most of all from people is, oh, so you just sit around in your pyjamas watching Loose Women all day. And that's sort of annoying, because it's my job, and I work quite hard. And I think what people do is they confuse what they do on a sick day with what you do to earn money to feed yourself, which is, it's annoying. And also they don't understand how motivating kind of fear of poverty is. If you don't write something, then you don't get paid, so you have to be completely on it. I work really hard to make sure that I have enough money to eat things. I eat quite a lot, so I have to work really hard. Another thing I hear, which is really annoying, is, so you don't get dressed at all. And that's terrible, because that's just a horrible misconception about freelance writers. You work from home, you just sit around in your pants all day just writing whatever, and then go and watch the television. And that's something, you're going to get used to hearing that, and it's just something that you've got to get used to. Having said that, point number 5. Point number 5, right. Point number 5, you will actually never get dressed. That is, there will come a day, you might start with the best of intentions. You might think, today I'm going to wear a suit, and I'm going to sit at my desk. I might even wear shoes. I'm going to sit at my desk, and I'm going to write things like a professional. But then a day will come. Maybe it'll be a hot day. Maybe you'll be ill. Maybe you'll just be too busy to find some trousers. But you'll have a trouserless day. And it's kind of very liberating. And it's all right if you don't get dressed because no one can see you. And your writing doesn't really suffer because you've got your thighs out, I've found. Word of advice, if you do ever go trouserless when you're working, keep a pair of trousers next to you, because the day you take your trousers off to work is the day that the postman will deliver hundreds of things at hundreds of journeys, and there's nothing quite as embarrassing as shouting, "I'll be there in a minute," for ages, while you're sort of trying to jump into a pair of jeans. So that's I think my first piece of practical advice that I've given you. Always keep a pair of trousers next to you. Point number 6. This is a long one. You will become so starved of human interaction that you will place an unhealthy amount of validation on the comments underneath your online pieces. I got really loud then. When you work in an office, you get a lot of feedback from your colleagues. You can pass someone in a corridor and they'll say, "Hey, good job yesterday." And that's nice, and that sort of buoys you up a bit. And you don't really get that when you work from home, because you don't have any corridors. And if you do, you're the only one there, and no one sort of ever says, "Good job." So the fact that you're a writer is you write because you want to be read. And it's nice to have feedback. And the one place you're guaranteed to get feedback, if you write for an online publication, is the comments underneath your articles. And that's okay, because, even if you've never met that person, if they say, "That you did a really terrific job, you did a really good job with this, the writing was funny and sharp and I learnt new things," that's something that you can really clutch to your heart for the rest of the day, and it will really make you feel good. The problem with that is that no one in the history of the internet has ever left a comment saying, "Oh, terrific job." In my experience, they've all been along the lines of, "Your mum is a prostitute and I hope you die soon." So the key word here is unhealthy, because you really shouldn't pay that much attention to people, to the comments that are left. Maybe this is from personal experience, because I get an awful lot of horrible comments. But they're written by people who leave comments underneath things on the internet. I mean, who does that, for God's sake? That's weird. And they probably wouldn't say it to you if they met you in real life, because it's just the internet, they can sort of hide. So, either try and develop a bit of a thick skin when it comes to feedback, or don't take it to heart, or just ignore it completely. That's my point. Number 7. Right, this one's actually important for the first one that's important. You're going to learn, when you're freelancing, that every editor that you have operates differently. The relationship that you have with your editors as a freelancer is the single most important relationship that you're going to have in your career, because they tell you what to do, they guide you based on sort of how they treat your writing, that your writing changes as a result of that. But the thing is, they all have different ways of operating, and that can be quite confusing. I work for The Guardian, which has hundreds of different departments, hundreds of different editors, and it's quite confusing. I have editors who like to phone me up, and editors who like to email me, for example. I have editors who take my copy, don't even say thank you when I email it to them, and just put it on the site unchanged. I have editors who will hack away without asking me and change it completely. I've got editors who will send me weird, panicky, apologetic emails because they had to move a comma in sort of paragraph 4. Just a whole range of different approaches. And at first, it can really sort of throw you off your game because you don't know what to expect. So I've learned to kind of make a mental note of how they work, so I won't be surprised. For example, I just this week, actually, I got an email from an editor I write for a lot, and I was looking at it on my phone, and you know where you just see the first line of your email on your phone? It said, "This is brilliant." So I would have, a previous version of me would have just put my phone back in my pocket and gone, "Hey, brilliant, great job." But I've known from experience that anything she writes that begins with "this is brilliant" ends in "you must change every single word of this." So, that as soon as I see an email saying "this is brilliant," my heart sinks, which is weird, sort of counterproductive training. So, learn how your editors operate and try and learn to work with them, because it makes life a lot easier. Number 8. You will learn that being quick and good is better than being slow and brilliant. Especially when you're writing for a daily. You could write the best, most profound, most life-changing, world-changing important piece that you're capable of. But if you get it in sort of an hour after deadline, your editor's going to be really pissed off with you. And if you do it 3 times, he might not ask you to write for him again. So you have to kind of find a balance between getting it right and being good and being, thoughtful or investigative or clever or funny or whatever you want to be, and sort of hitting your targets. I might be a bit biased. The only compliment I've ever got at The Guardian is, "Wow, that was quick." They've never said, "Well, that was good." So maybe it's sort of Pavlovian that I'm telling you this, but you have to sort of learn to operate within the sort of the constrictions. It's changing a bit with digital because deadlines aren't sort of, you don't have to stop everything, so a piece of paper can be printed and sent out in vans to shops. So there's a bit more leeway now, but it's still a good sort of motto to live by, because if you're a freelancer, you have your reputation is the thing that you need to get more work, and if you're reliable, that's going to help you a lot. Similarly, you're going to learn that it is better to be a nice person than a tortured genius. There's this sort of myth of writers that they're sort of this drunk, angry, sort of anti-authoritarian, surrounded by pieces of crumpled up paper, even though they don't really use a typewriter. I don't know what that's about. And they hate the world, and they've got to follow their creative muse. I know lots of writers like that, and pretty much none of them are employed. it's a job, and you have to treat it like a job. Before I started writing for The Guardian, I had a blog, and we accepted pieces from people, like a whole different range of people. And any day of the week, I would rather take a piece of bad writing from someone I got on with than a piece of amazing writing from someone who was a nightmare. Because you can always fix bad writing. You can always, even if you have to spend hours picking through it, word by word, to put it back into order. It's not the best thing in the world, and the person who wrote that isn't probably going to get the best career as a writer, but you can always fix it. But you can't fix an idiot. The person who emails you furiously 7 times while you've just gone to the toilet, angrier and angrier because you've changed a couple of words, that person is just going to sort of ruin your life as an editor, and you have to sort of micromanage them as people. A tortured genius might make your output sort of 2% better, but as an editor, he'll make your day 90% worse. And I found that they're not worth, the benefits isn't really worth it, and they're not worth having around. And I think, maybe at The Guardian, because they're all sort of woolly liberal people, they kind of think the same. It might be different at other publications. Point number 10. Right, yeah, this is a good one. You will either be way too busy or not busy enough. Freelancing isn't a job for people who like to have a steady trickle of work. I find myself vacillating between being either so unbelievably busy that I grind my teeth at night and I can't sleep and my hair's sort of falling out, and I panic about the next week because I don't think I'm going to get anything done. Or having a couple of days with no work and thinking that everyone's forgotten I exist and that I'm a terrible person and that I may as well be dead. And it's either one or the other. And I know that if it's one, then the other one will come along, and they balance each other out. But in the moment, it's horrible. It's horrible. You're in a constant state of panic. I am currently in the first part. I've got so much work on. I'm pretty much constantly on the verge of tears. I came here yesterday, right? I wanted to see the deep, because people on Twitter told me I should go and visit the deep because there are penguins. And people get really angry if you call it an aquarium, and I thought that might be funny. And I wanted to, but on the train up, I got an email from one of my editors asking for 800 words on why I like bananas. That's genuinely true. And so I had to go back to my hotel room and write an enormously long piece using every single fact about bananas I could think of. So look out for that on Wednesday in The Guardian. Number 11, this is especially true at the beginning of your career. You will write terrible things for horrible publications just for the money. You go into journalism thinking everything I write is going to be profound and world-changing, and it's going to fulfill me as a person, and everyone's going to love me, and I'm going to only write for people who I have an ideological bond with. And that's good, you're allowed to think that, but then you'll realise your rent's due, and that will just go out of the window. Retrospectively, I don't think I was probably the right person to write an article for Grazia about whether I'd prefer to marry Kate Moss or Kate Middleton. But I did it. I don't think it's on the internet, I'm pleased about that. And everyone does it. I have a friend who writes for the Daily Mail now and again. And he writes these sort of weird, sort of Samantha Brick first-person stories about his romantic life. And every time he does it, he hates it. He hates it so much because they drag him into the office. They put him into a weird, uncomfortable suit. They make him sort of stand in a sort of Guantanamo Bay stress position that makes him look really awkward. They change all his copy, and then they put a headline on it that's like, "Oh, look at me, I think I'm the bee's knees," just so that commenters will be furious about how he looks and his high opinion of himself. And they'll take him to task constantly, and his mum will get upset because people are being mean to him on the internet, and every time he does it, he gets fully depressed. He genuinely, clinically depressed, and he says, "Oh, I can't do it anymore, I can't do it anymore. This is the last time I'm ever going to write for the Daily Mail." a month later he'll write something else, because they pay, like, this is the dirty secret about the Daily Mail, they pay loads of money compared to all the other newspapers. I've heard, I haven't written anything for them, but I probably will at some point. It's you kind of, when that happens, when you end up writing just weird crap for the money, it's sort of morally you feel a bit bad, because it's not why you sort of went into journalism, but it will happen and you just sort of have to get used to it. So yeah, deal with it. What a horrible point that was. Right, 12. You will look up lots of accountants. I'm probably running out of time. You'll look up lots of accountants because, as I said at the beginning, you have to do your own taxes as a freelance journalist. So you have to have like a separate bank account that you put some of your money into, so you don't end up with an enormous tax bill that you can't get rid of. And the best thing to do when you are presented with a tax, when it's sort of tax period, is to look up a load of accountants, because there are very good accountants that deal specifically with freelance journalists, and they can save you time, they'll save you lots of money, they'll save you lots of stress. I'm telling you this because I've never actually hired one. It's just what I've heard. And I make such a mess every year. I basically fill in my self-assessment form on the internet by closing my eyes and just mashing numbers on my keyboard until it says it's full. And then I send it off. And then the tax office writes back and says, "You're an idiot, what have you done?" And I've either overpaid by a lot or I've underpaid a lot. The good news is that the tax office is very good at dealing with idiots, and they're very good at explaining what you've done and sorting it out. So it always gets there in the end. But yeah, just don't be as dumb as I am. Just when the time comes, get an accountant. Okay, so you have been in this weird situation I've imagined. You've been a freelance writer for a while now. You've got used to writing for different publications. You've done things you're not that proud of, but they've paid okay. You've paid taxes. And after a while, the benefits of being freelance are going to sort of open up to you. So, like when you're in an office, working in an office is crap, because like there's someone listening to music slightly too loudly over there. There's someone talking about their kids over there. There's someone eating a sandwich in front of you. There's someone else who just breathes through their mouth noisily, constantly at you, and you can't work because you just want to punch them in the face forever. But when you work from home, that doesn't happen. If you want to work in absolute silence, you can do that. If you want to listen to music, you can do that. If you like to work very early in the mornings or at night, you can do that. You can set your own conditions exactly as you want them. And you don't get holiday pay, but you can just go on holiday whenever you want. You don't have to book holiday like everyone else does. You can just put out of office on and disappear, and it'll be fine. So, yeah, it really, setting your own conditions, being in charge of your day is a really amazing thing. It's not the most amazing thing, though. This is the best thing about being freelance. You get to say no to stuff, and that's fantastic. I've worked out from experience, I've been a freelancer for about 5 years, that there are 4 main stages to being a freelancer. The first stage is where you don't really know what you're doing, and you're just sort of throwing out hundreds of pictures to editors willy-nilly, and you're getting it wrong, and they're not answering, and you're not doing very well. The second stage is where you've sort of got the hang of it a bit, and you know the editors who like you and the publications that are interested in you. So you're sending fewer pitches, but they're sort of hitting the targets more, and you're getting work from it. And that's really good. That's a big step when that happens. The third step is when editors start to pitch stuff to you, which is very, very flattering. They see, they've seen enough of your work to trust you, and they will now and again say, "Hey, we need 700 words on bananas," and you'll write it, and that's really flattering, because that means that someone in an office of a newspaper had an idea and thought, who'd be good at this? That person. And they've asked you, and that's a really excellent, flattering thing. But a lot of the time their ideas are rubbish, but you'll do them because you're kind of scared. You don't want to say no because then you're worried that they'll stop. The fourth part, I've only just sort of got to this point, is you get to say no when people ask you to write terrible things. So, like, recently, someone asked me if I wanted to go on a 2-week bell ringing course. No. And hand on heart, this happened to me. On Christmas Day, at 10 o'clock in the morning, on Christmas Day, I got an email from, I won't say the name of the editor, but an editor at The Guardian. He emailed me to ask me if I could write 600 words on Justin Bieber. I was literally mid-present. And a year or two ago, I probably would have done it. I'd have snuck off before lunch and written out. But I could be, this time I could say no. And it was brilliant. You're fully in control of your career when you get to choose exactly what you want to write. And at that point, this is such a cheesy ending, and I apologise in advance. You will realise that you have the best job in the world. And that's it. That's the end. Are there any questions? No? Oh, question. Hi. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Did you all hear that? That was, he was saying that as a graduate, the difficult step he's facing is writing stuff for nothing, going from that to writing stuff for money. And that's I've been through that because I had a blog where I was basically writing for nothing, and I treated it in the end as a sort of a portfolio for paid work. But it's a hard step because once you're sort of seen as the guy who is prepared to write anything for nothing, it's quite difficult to break out of that. On the other hand, it's good because you're building up this enormous bank of work that you can show people from publications that do pay. You can show them and say, how about this? It's just, I guess, just pitch to a few different editors at places that do pay and just try and tip the balance that way, because it's tough, especially with like the Huffington Post and websites like that. It's really difficult because you always hear the line, it's great exposure. People always say, oh, it's great exposure. And you can only get so much exposure before, you need to eat food. So, yeah, just start. It's good at the beginning, especially when you need to sort of prove yourself as a writer. But, yeah, you need to try and pitch to other publications, because some of them do pay still, for the time being, at least. Any more questions? Oh, hi. Okay, that was where should you start if you want to be a freelance writer? Do you have a blog? I think it's a really good idea to get your own blog and write a lot of the sort of thing you'd like to write as a freelancer, because when you're sort of unproven, your editors will look for examples of your writing. So the more you write at the beginning, the more you can say, I saw you published a feature on this. I wrote this blog about this. And it's a slow process, but just once you've built up that, then get into the whole find contacts, and it's the hardest part. Once you've done that, once you've started, it's kind of a piece of cake. But the very first step is really difficult. Did you have a question too? Yeah, right. So that was there a topic that you got a lot of work for? This is a really crappy thing to be known for. But I did the X Factor Live blog, the Guardian's X Factor Live blog, because the woman who was doing it went to America and she just wasn't able to watch it. I think she ran away to America because she'd been watching X Factor for 3 years and it melted her brain. And so I kind of took over for that. And that tends to be, from there, it's kind of blossomed out into just bad television. So I just write about sort of reality TV and singing shows and stuff. So yeah, it's good to, old-fashioned journalists call it a beat, which I don't really think of myself enough of a journalist to say I sort of deserve a beat. But once you carve out the subjects that you write the most about, that's what people will sort of gravitate towards you when they think of an idea about that. So it's nice to kind of work out a niche at the beginning, I think. Any more questions? No more questions. All right. Well, thanks very much. And, oh, wait. No, that was... I'm going to show you my Twitter thing again because I am vain, number one. And number two, I've got to dash off at 12. So if you do have any more questions, that's where you can get in touch with me. All right, you can probably clap now.